Hello everyone. Hoping that you can see us and hear us. Really sorry that there've been a few technical issues, so we've been a bit delayed in starting. But I'm going to hand over, if that's okay, Steve, to our Steve Arderwater, District Councillor for West Berkshire, who's going to take us through this webinar. Over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Jenny, and good afternoon, everybody. Again, it's great you're able to join us today because sustainability is a really important subject, as is hospitality, and it's a really exciting concept. I'm sure you have an interesting session here where we combine the interplay between two important businesses within our district and the environment and sustainability and the journey towards net zero, which most of us here on the call are working towards. So by way of brief introductions, I will introduce our two speakers who will then discuss their aspect and their thoughts and ideas, and we'll handle some questions for each of those. And then as time allows, we will then proceed on to questions which you may raise during the rest of the session. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Andy Kershaw, who's the Director of Property at Marston's Pubs, a name which I suspect will be familiar to many across the district and wider. So Marston's has been part of the British pub landscape for over 180 years, and they've grown from a local family-run business to a public company with over 1,500 pubs. And there are several in West Berkshire, and I'm very happy to say that I'm fortunate enough to live near one of them, and I'm very happy to sample the quality of food and refreshment available there. So I'll hand back to you in a minute, Andy, but also while we're here, I'd like to equally introduce Colleen Watts, who is the owner of Colleen's Kitchen, which is a local baking and event catering company that aims to be the go-to place for healthy and sustainable food. The cafe is based in the Waterside Centre in Newbury. And again, I'm very happy that I've been able to sample some of Colleen's food, and I can particularly recommend the sausage rolls, as well as a large number of other offerings from Colleen. So we'll hear from Colleen in a few minutes, but firstly, I'd like to hand over to Andy, who will give us his views, and we have some immediate questions, and then after Andy and questions, we'll move back to Colleen. So Andy, thank you for joining us, and over to you first.
Thanks very much, Steve, and thanks everyone for having me. So I'm not in control of my slides; someone else is presenting them for me. So there'll be a few Chris Whitty moments in this as I ask for next slide, please. So I'm glad you introduced us as not as some huge pub company, and we like to trade on local ethics and the fact that we deliver locally to our clients right across the UK. So next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about Marston's. I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement and the way we change behaviour of our teams. We have 13,000 employees across the UK, so we've got quite a big business, as Steve rightly said. And then I'm going to get into a bit more detail around talking about waste. And we don't really think of waste as waste. We think of it as a resource in our business. Talk a little bit about energy, heat, light, power in particular. And then water, a little bit about how we've been recognised by both our peer sets and the wider industry. And then a little bit about what we're looking to do over the next 10 to 20 years. So, and then, as Steve said, I'm more than happy to take questions along the way. So yeah, next slide, please. So, as Steve rightly said, we have 180 years of heritage. We have around about 1,500 pubs in the UK. They're split across typical boozers, 495 of those, through community pubs into premium bars, and then we have some town centre bars, and we've got some recognised brands in there such as Pitcher and Piano that you may well be familiar of. We have well, nearly 13,000 employees. This slide's a little bit out of date, and we are a FTSE 250 business. We facilitate hybrid working across our business, not so much obviously in our pub estate, but certainly in our head office building. And we have literally moved into our new head office building 6 weeks ago, and it's a particularly sustainable building. We've got energy performance certificate of A on a refurbished 1970s office building, and we're incredibly proud of what we've achieved in our new home. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk about our journey as Marston's. Really, we're not really talking about sustainability in 1 year or 5 years. We're talking about sustainability as being business as usual within our business. This scale goes back to 2011, but it could go further back than that. And this has got some key items and key initiatives that we put in place. So people talking now, even in their homes, about installing LED lighting and loft installation and things like that. Well, we started retrofitting LED lighting back in 2011, and our whole estate was completely LED'd by 2017. We started huge initiatives in waste and recycling, and back in 2018 we stopped putting food in the ground or waste in the ground, and we went zero waste to landfill. And since then we've achieved quite substantial recycling rates. We were one of the first hospitality businesses in the UK to gain our own water license. So we self-supply water, and you're able to do that when you use as much water as we do. And I appreciate a lot of these numbers are quite big numbers, but these break down right down to our total pub estate. So the initiatives that we might do as a wider business break down to individual businesses, and we've got pubs on the estate that take no more than a few £1,000s a week, and those initiatives are really relative to all pubs on the estate. And our big commitment going forward is our commitment to net zero. So scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030, scope 1, 2 and 3 by 2040, and that's fairly commonplace across the hospitality or the wider hospitality business. Next slide, please. So key things or key items that we've achieved over the last 10 years. We have the largest rollout of electric car chargers in hospitality. We've got 133 sites on our estate that have rapid EV charging in place. We will have 200 sites by July this year, and those are rapid chargers that will charge your electric vehicle within 30 minutes. I talked about our zero waste to landfill. We've year on year since 2012, we've reduced our carbon footprint every year, and we've reduced our energy usage, and that's we measure energy usage per pint of beer that we sell. We use that as an internal metric, which we think is quite cute and works well for our teams and our business. We've started installing recycled plastic furniture in our gardens. We no longer use timber garden furniture, and this winter, for instance, we're rolling out £4 million worth of recycled garden furniture, which is the biggest rollout that we've done for many years. We have items in some of our large sites such as cardboard contractors, and all of our bedding from our lodges. We have 1,500 hotel rooms across the UK is recycled. So that's some of the big wins that we've had lately. Next slide, please. So I think the most important thing, though, when you've got such a large team is that you've got to engage your business. And one thing that we do, or we feel that we do quite well, is we're engaged as a business from exec board right the way down to employee at pub level. And that could be the pot wash, that could be someone serving, that could be someone who's a chef or a second chef in the kitchen, and very, very different levels of engagement for different people without the business. Someone who is an 18-year-old serving on the restaurant floor may well be really interested in saving the polar bears, whereas the exec at the top of the pile may be really looking at sustainability as an engagement piece. And what we need to make sure is we engage with people at different levels across the business at their particular level, so that they understand what we're trying to achieve. So next slide, please. So we've had various staff engagement campaigns over the years since 2012, and we've had Wise Up to Waste, we've had Going Green, we've had Take Control. They've had various iterations, but all of them are exactly the same thing. They're reskins of various things. If you don't tell people what they are using and don't measure the items that they're using, there is no way that people can improve. So it all starts by measurement, whether it be waste, whether it be energy, whether it be gas. Everything has got to be measured in order to for you to be able to improve it and to reduce it. And what we do is we incentivize and delegate people at local levels to ensure that they come back. So we have a recycler of the quarter for every pub on the estate, and we'll pay them, we'll turn up with a comedy check, a large check, and we'll pay that team in that pub for being the best team for recycling for that quarter. And we find with league tables in particular, everyone likes to be at the top of a league table. No one really likes to be at the bottom of a league table, and that is just the same as we are, whether you're looking at football or rugby or all those things. No one wants to be bottom of the league, and it's exactly the same in this. So we incentivize our team, and our team and our customers are also looking for that engagement as well. And we've seen a lot of customer queries over the last few years and feedback on various engagement in the sustainability arena. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit more about waste now, and we don't really think about waste as waste. I want to talk about waste as a resource, and we absolutely treat waste as a resource in our business, and that was a step change around about 2017. Have the next slide, please. So we use the waste hierarchy. So the most important thing about waste is that you should be preventing waste in the first place. You should never let waste get into your business. So you prevent actually getting that in. So whether that be packaging, whether that be excess food, whether that be paper, cardboard, whatever it might be. And really you should start at the top of the pyramid, and you should be looking at waste as, can I prevent it coming into my business? No, I can't. Okay, so the next thing is, can I reuse it within my business? No, I can't. Okay, in which case, can I recycle it? And then it moves down and moves down. And obviously the last resort in the waste hierarchy is that you've got to dispose of it. And really you want stuff that can go into your business that doesn't have to come back out at the other end. And certainly as a worst case scenario, it certainly doesn't want to end up in the ground. So a great example of this within our business, in our hotel rooms, we have 1,500 hotel rooms. We used to put a plastic bottle of water or 2 bottles of water in every single hotel room across the estate every night of the year. Hundreds of thousands of bottles of water. We now make sure that there's filtered water available in every hotel facility, whether that be on the corridor or whatever, and every room now has 2 glasses. So the bottles of water were basically being either taken from the hotel room or were being drunk on site. And then we had all that plastic waste coming back into our business. Now people drink what they want to drink still, but obviously we have a glass there that we can just clean after, and we've just cleaned up that recycle. We've saved hundreds of thousands of plastic bottles from going into the recycling stream. We did a load of work over the last 18 months or so for menu simplification, and great examples in that world would be having, steak and chips with a side salad on it. And we were noticing that nearly all of the side salads were coming back, or bits of the side salad were coming back, and people weren't eating tomatoes and so on and so forth. So we've actually looked at that menu and said, what is it? Paneled it with customers. What is it that people like about this menu? Well, actually, they like the steak and the chips, because actually people really go to a pub because they want beer and chips or steak and chips, or they want a burger. That's what they want. A pub is a pub. It should be a nice warm cuddle. They don't really want to go and have a salad. So actually now we perhaps put some leaves or some garnish on the same side of that steak and chips, but actually that reduced our food waste quite considerably. We did that across our whole menu, and that contributed to a 29% reduction in our food waste between 2019 and today. And there are many other things on the slide there that you can happily look at, and I'm more than happy for people to share these slides after this. So next slide, please. So when we talk about waste, our key journey in waste was in 2017, we changed from having one national waste contractor. So I don't want to talk about particularly those contractors, but all the big ones, Biffa, Veolia, all that. Really, those guys are emptying your bins, putting them into wheels and sending it off. That's all they really care about. And if there's anyone on this call from one of those organisations, I apologise already. What we did we introduced a broker model, and what a broker is able to do is to make sure that they can use the perfect facility that you have in that area to get rid of your waste in that area. So we broke up all of our waste stream, and we incorporated food waste into 75% of our sites. We had dry mixed recyclables. We had a general waste bin, we have glass waste, and obviously, as I say, we have the food. Now, really, when you're talking about waste, your last bin of choice should be the general waste bin. Hopefully, you know, your glass goes in your glass, your DMR goes in something else, your food goes in something else, and you should really, the last bin of choice is that general waste bin. And we spent a lot of time over 17, 18, 19 ensuring that we could reduce the amount of waste that our team were putting into that general waste bin, and education is absolutely key to that. In the sites where we're producing an awful lot of DMR, 183 of them, we also introduced cardboard balers, because that way we can bale up the cardboard, reduce the actual DMR waste, and you find that people are putting empty cardboard boxes into DMR bins and not breaking them down, and so on and so forth. So as I say, we achieved a zero waste to landfill in 2018, and then we acquired a big estate of pubs in South Wales, SA Brains, in 2021, just in lockdown, another 120 pubs. And through that year, in the middle of lockdown, we also introduced zero waste to landfill in the SA Brains estate. We've now got a really good measurement on our food waste analysis, and we've just introduced a new target based upon our 2019 food waste figures, and we are going to reduce our food waste by 2030 by a further 50% based upon our 2019, and that is just through measurement and understanding what's in our bins. So, and a lot of that really is getting someone, open a bin, empty that bin out, and really understand what's in there. And we've done a lot of that work over the last few months. It's not clean, it's not pretty, but is essential, because you need to measure what you're putting out there in order to be able to reduce it. Next slide, please. So, as I say, you know, waste to resource. So if you see I think the slide on the graph on the right hand side helps you to really understand it. So everything that was going in our bin up to 2016 was pretty much going into general waste bins. We were recycling some glass, we were recycling bits and bobs of other things. From introducing the broker model in 2016, everything that's in yellow in that graph is now going to recycling. So between 2016 and 2023, our average recycling figure is somewhere between 70 and 80%. So 70 and 80% of all of our product that goes out of our 1,500 sites on the estate goes back into a recycling stream. So it's going to be made into something else. The other 20% there, as I say, none of it is going to landfill, but it will be going to anaerobic digestion in some cases. It will be going to incineration, and it will be going to energy reuse. And we don't class that as recycling anything that's going to incineration, because actually it's not true recycling. And we use a national broker called Novarti. There are many brokers out there, and you can do that. And as I say, the zero waste to landfill was 2 years ahead of our target. We expected to introduce our brokers in 2016 and get to zero waste to landfill in 2020, and we achieved that back in 2018. Next slide, please. Moving on from waste or resource, if you like, to energy. Next slide, please. We treat energy as business as usual. So these are our key goals. So we chill a lot of beer. No one likes a warm beer. No one likes it on a sunny day and to come into a pub and it warm and frothy and so on and so forth. But there are certain times a year that when you're chilling a cellar to 10 degrees, you don't need to use a refrigeration unit to do that. You can use fresh air cooling. So back in 2012, which seems an eternity ago now, we introduced what we call fresh air cellar cooling. And fresh air cellar cooling is nothing more than a big fan that sucks in the ambient air from outside. If it's less than 10 degrees outside, it brings that into your cellar, and you use the fresh air from outside to chill the beer. That in turn turns your big fridge unit off, which could be using many kilowatts of electricity per day, and saves you an absolute fortune. And we find that between around about November and March time, our fridge units on our cellars don't have to run at all. And even some summer evenings, they don't need to run when it gets after 10, 11 o'clock at night. That reduces noise complaints, but it also saves you an awful lot of electricity. Otherwise, you're just chilling this big room that you don't need to do. We also started procuring back in 2013 based upon life cycle costs. So if we're buying a new fridge, we will look at the fridge, and I like to use the analogy of cars, really, because I think it's the easiest way to do it. So you can either buy a Ford Fiesta, you can buy a BMW, or you can buy a Rolls Royce. Now, they're quite a spread of costs along the way, but in fridge terms, you might buy 3 fridges, your cheapest, your medium one, the most expensive one. Your cheapest one might actually cost a lot more to run than the most expensive one, because that's why it's the most expensive one. And also it might cost a lot to repair over the lifetime of the machine. So when we are buying a fridge, we took a look at it as an average life cycle of between 7 and 9 years. But we will look at how much it costs to run that on a daily basis, that fridge, how much we think it will cost to repair through that period of time, and then how much it cost in the first place. And then we measure all of those things together. And actually, in many times, the medium cost piece of equipment probably is the most effective to both purchase and run through that whole period of time. Not always, but in most cases. So we've been purchasing in that way since 2013, and that's certainly changed our strategy. We built our first BREEAM excellent new build pub back in 2014. As I say, we had total LED across all of our trade areas in our pubs back in 2017. All areas, including back of house areas, by 2019 for LED. And one of the big challenges that we're doing now is we think that we've picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit off our estate, really, when it comes to energy. So we are now completing full site-by-site, real detailed energy audits on every single pub of our estate now. So we're now looking at not so much the low-hanging fruit, but we're looking at site-specific items that we can deal with. And if you think we've got pubs that are, you know, I'm thinking of a new build pub that we've got in Newbury up by the Tesco's and the 2 Watermills. There it is. The 2 Watermills is a very new build, very efficient pub. But we've then got pubs like the Swan at Thatcham, which is, and again, not too far away from you guys, which is 150 years old and is not so efficient. And so what we need to spend on the new build pub at the 2 Watermills will be very different to what we need to do on the Swan at Thatcham. So we've done all of the basics, and now we're looking in detail at the rest of the estate. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we're so proud about is our relationship with Osprey. We, as I say, we reviewed this market back in 2017, and there were a few Teslas on the road and a few electric cars. And as you've seen now, they are all over the place. And clearly, at this moment in time, anyway, the government want to phase them out by 2030 with regard to diesel and petrol, and everything will move electric. We've basically, our standard rollout is 2 rapid chargers, 250 kilowatt rapid chargers in 200 sites. But actually the picture that you see on this slide is the Paisley Pair, which is up in Brackley, which is not too far away from you guys in West Berks. And Brackley, we've got the first electric car charging hub in hospitality across the UK. So we have 10 rapid chargers over in Brackley, very close to Silverstone. The investment at that site between ourselves and Osprey was 750,000 for that installation. So it's not cheap, it's big money. But this is the equivalent of a petrol station as it would have been a few years ago for electric vehicles on a pub car park. And this works really well for us, and it works well for Osprey because, as I say, the dwell time on electric car charging is around about 30 minutes, which suits someone going into the pub and having a pint, or someone going in and having a burger and chips and a pint, or maybe it could be a cup of coffee and a cake in the morning. And all our pubs have Wi-Fi and all the other facilities that you would expect as well. So we think those two things work quite well together. Next slide, please. Oh, are we stuck? There we go. So moving on to water. So next slide, please. So the important thing about water is you've absolutely got to take control. So we achieved Marston's water license back in 2018, I think it was now. So as they deregulated the water industry, you basically have suppliers, then you have retailers, and then you have end users. And what we've done, rather than buy all our water from a retailer, we've become the retailer in that mix. So we're not only the end user, we're also the retailer, and we buy directly from the suppliers. We can't supply to any third parties, we can only supply to our own business. So we only have 1,500 supply points, or a few more than that actually on our estate. But we supply ourselves. That means then in turn we read our own meters. So we are, if you look at Ofwat's industry league tables every year, there are however many large water companies, and then there are a number obviously got self-supply licenses. We are one of the most efficient water companies in the UK because we make sure that we read all of our own meters every year, because we want to be billed correctly every year. We're on the right tariffs every year, and they can't achieve that through Severn Trent or through Southern Water or through Thames Water or whatever those can be, because they just sheerly haven't got enough feet on the ground. And what this enabled to do, because we're measuring and we know accurately what our bills are, we've actually completed a lot of leak detection, and we've found significant leaks. You know, we're talking about leaks that were running underneath car parks that we never knew about, that were equivalent to swimming pool volumes of water that were just washing away under the ground, and those you all got billed for. So and also in turn it allows us to have a voice in the water industry. So next slide, please. On water, as we say, it's big numbers. So we thought we were quite good at water. Back in 2011, we installed things like systemizers, we install items like that. But seriously, we've ongoing savings of £131,000 worth of leaks. So next slide, please. And we've been recognised along the way. So next slide, please. So be it across industry or across our colleagues and peers, we've been received various awards a long time. So and this goes back to 2018, and again we're currently up for a Publican Awards, which is kind of the Oscars of our industry. So next slide, please. So as I say, today, 2030, 2040, we will have full net zero by 2040. 50% food waste reduction by 2030, scope 1 and 2 reduction by 2030 as well. Next slide, please. And that's me. So Steve, I'll hand it back to you, but I'm happy to take questions after the end.
That's great. Thank you very much, Andy. I think as we may be slightly tight on time, and again, many apologies for the late start of this. I think I'll ask Colleen to speak next, and then we'll ask with you. So again, Colleen of Colleen's Kitchen, over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me, and myself as well. I'm gonna have my slides being controlled by somebody else, so I'm gonna start just by talking about a little bit about my journey and how I started. So next slide, please. So I started my cafe and catering business back in 2019. So my cafe was located in the town hall in Newbury Town Centre. I started off as a real novice. My journey is for another day because it will probably take about 4 hours to talk about it. But I was previously an accountant, and I became a home baker in 2018 while I was baking when I was on mat leave. And I came up with a crazy idea of starting my own cafe. And it started off in a very, very small space, just being me alone, being the cook, caterer, barista, basically everything. Or from starting from a journey where I didn't really have much experience in the industry. I'd never worked in the hospitality industry at all. But one of the things that I knew that I wanted as a foodie, because I've always been a foodie, I've always loved enjoying eating food, is one of the things that I knew for sure that I wanted was to make sure that my food was fresh, it was locally sourced as much as possible, and I was being sustainable. So I spent a lot of the time before I opened my cafe just researching on what all those things actually meant. And for me, I am a massive, massive supporter of supporting other local businesses locally to where I am. So I knew that was my starting point. So from the very beginning, on day one, when I opened, every single product that I had in the tiny cafe that I had where you could seat only 10 people were all foods and ingredients that were sourced locally, and they were all from either Newbury or within 10 miles of here. So next slide, please. So when I looked and did a lot of research, I looked at what being a small, tiny cafe, what sustainability actually meant to me. So for me, one of the things was just on food provenance, basically knowing where the food was coming from. So the real route of where all my food was coming, the production methods, and the transport and how it was actually transported to me. And the second thing that was important was food waste. I really wanted to make sure that everything that I was doing, I was keeping food waste to a very minimum. So the idea that I had again from day one was making sure that I was not over preparing and just operating once it's gone method. And that's what I'm using now, almost 4 years down the line since I started. And another thing was packaging waste. So I wanted to make sure that whatever package I was using, especially being as a cafe, we do a lot of takeaways. So in terms of like the cups that we use, the packaging that we're using. I wanted to make sure that every single one of these products were sustainable. And also, it's not just from myself, but also from our suppliers. So I wanted to make sure that there was no single-use plastic that was being used. And if there were any way that we can be able to keep any packaging waste to a minimum, I was speaking to all the local suppliers I was using to make sure that we don't have that. So my two biggest suppliers from then till now, Fish of Newbury and Lonely Lentil. So they all send us all our products without any plastic. And there's just a few, maybe 2 or 3 products, usually salad leaves, that get sent to us that are in plastic, but everything else is sent to us without any single-use plastic, which has become a massive, massive big part of what we do. And it's the same thing in all the different takeaway packaging that we used. I did a lot of research in finding really good single-use takeaway containers, cups, etc. And the best thing that we could find were things that were biodegradable. And upon doing even more research, I realized that actually it is a better alternative, but it doesn't make much use if it's not actually being disposed of in the right way. So I did, again, a lot of research in finding companies that would come and collect from us. And all this, with being a small business, it costs quite a lot. So we've been encouraging a lot of our customers to actually bring in their own reusable cups, containers, and cutlery for a discount in order for us to actually have minimum use of all these single-use things. And between 2019 to now, I started off on most days, we probably had about 20 to 30 takeaways, where we were using a lot of these takeaway containers and cups. And now we probably have about 3 or 4 a day. And this is a massive, massive, massive reduction from where we started, considering that my business has actually grown about 30 times what it was back in 2019. So next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of a list about all our suppliers. So like I said, one of the things that's so important to me as a small business. So I've grown from being in a small, tiny cafe where you'd see 10 people. And now I have about 70 covers where I am now at the Waterside Center, but I'm still using the same small independent businesses that are all locally. And this is something that is still very, very important to me. So some of you guys that are in Newbury, you probably recognize some of these brands. So all our meat comes from Griffin's Butchers, which is literally 200 steps away from here. And we use Fish of Newbury. They're a family-owned business that have been running for over 70 years. They've been running a little longer than that, but within this family, they've been running for 70 years. And they bring all our fruit and vegetables, and also some of our dry ingredients and some of our things like tomato sauce, basically cupboard staples. They bring all that to us, and they are about 1.5 miles away from us. So I also use the Newbury market. So we have a market here in Newbury that's on a Saturday and a Thursday and a Saturday. And I buy quite a lot of my products and produce from them. So it's quite a nice thing between myself, and now that I have a team, it's no longer just me. It's quite a sense of pride and joy because we walk up to them and get all our products from them on a Thursday. Sometimes we have to order ahead of time because we're getting a little bit busy, but I'm really proud to say that we are using really small other local businesses, and we're supporting them by buying all our stuff from them. Next slide, please. So for me, I've been thinking, we've been doing all these amazing things, but we need to think about the future. What's in the future? And throughout the last 3 years, I've learned quite a lot in how to run a business. One of the things that I learned that as at the moment that, you know, we are in a cost of living crisis. The prices for food has gone up massively, and it has affected a lot of the hospitality industry. It puts a lot of pressure on us small businesses, especially, to think, how can we reduce costs? And most of the time, the first thing that people think is, okay, I've been buying from these small businesses, I should probably stop because it's getting too expensive. I need to find a cheaper supplier. But for me and my business, that's not an option, because having quality, having things that is local is the ethos of the business. So in terms of ways forward, one of the things that I've looked at doing, I'm now I've always done this, but it's now even more important for us to collaboratively work with other small independent businesses. So an example, what we're doing right now, we work with another local small business. When we're buying all our packaging, we actually buy it together and then share. And it sounds like a very silly idea, but we were sitting in a pub and we were talking, we're like, these things are becoming so expensive. How can we actually do this? So by working together, we are actually sharing the cost of our packaging. And it's made a massive difference to both of us, because sometimes you have to buy all these things in massive bulk, but I might not need all of it. But if you're working with somebody else, it works out much, much better and much cheaper. And actually being organized and planning ahead, because even some of our small local suppliers, they're also feeling the pinch. They need to know what they're going to need, what they're going to need from us ahead of time. So we're just working a little bit better in that we now planning a little bit ahead more than we used to before, because we were like, once it's gone, yes, it's gone. But one of the biggest planning that we're doing is making sure that a lot of our ingredients that we're buying, they're able to be used across the board from for when we have a menu. So when I sit down with my team, when we come up with the menus that we do, we think, okay, this ingredient, how can we use it in other ways, so that, let's say, on a day that is quiet, we now have avocados that are left over. How can we use avocados so that we make sure they're not wasted? So a bit of planning ahead of our menus has really helped us in making sure that we stay on track on not having food waste and not just wasting things. And shopping around and doing a lot of research. Again, because one of the things at the moment, we've seen a massive difference in the prices of our, I was just talking about the single-use cups and containers. Some of our suppliers that we're using before, where they used to claim that they are biodegradable, they're no longer biodegradable, but they're now giving us cheaper quality things for exactly the same price they were 6 months ago. So I just found that I just need to do a little bit more research in finding out, are they still as sustainable as they are saying? So it's quite a lot of work for us, but it's something that we're willing to do, because all of these things are really important. And again, working collaboratively with other people, we just find that it makes it so much better. And another main thing that we've been doing, we've been engaging with our customers to get some of their ideas. So I've just been interested when Andy was just talking about the fact that sometimes you can have something on your menu. He was talking about the salad. I was going to use that exact example as well. We were adding a little side salad on some of our mains, and every single time they were coming back. So we engaged with our customers and put up a poll on our Facebook and on our Instagram and said, does this salad actually do anything? And we found that it doesn't. It was just there to look a little bit pretty. So we stopped adding the salad. So engaging with our customers, getting their ideas, and also just telling them exactly what we're thinking. It helps because the communication is out there. They tell us, and we've learned so much from our customers as well, telling us, have you tried this? Have you tried this? So all of that is just helping us move forward so that we can still stay sustainable, even though we are feeling the pinch. So the next slide, I think, is just asking questions. So that is it from me. Hopefully it gives a little bit of an insight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colleen. That was really inspirational, and a great compliment to your talk, Andy. So it's really encouraging to see both large and small businesses such as yours doing active things and really persisting on a long haul. So again, we are a little bit tight for time, but we've got about 10 minutes for some questions, which I'll fire at you both. So one for you for starters, Andy. Can you tell us what your priorities, what will you do next to tackle your remaining carbon emissions? You've told us a lot of and it's great to see the various dimensions in which you're reducing waste in particular, but other than the waste footprint, what are your top biggest targets to go for, would you say?
So I think we're looking at a couple of things. So one, we're doing these individual energy surveys this year now. So that is looking literally down at site level. So pub A, pub B, pub C will have absolute different requirements now, because, as I say, we've done the big sweeping rollouts. It's easy in our world to trial 5 pubs, try, I don't know, LED lighting or try whatever it might be. But then when you get down to the point now, we could be talking about a 200-year-old thatched pub versus quite a new modern build. And actually you turn up and look at you, stick your head in the loft of the 200-year-old thatched pub, and actually there's no insulation in there at all. So these individual energy surveys, or whilst they're quite an investment, actually you can make a huge difference. But you've got to look at sites on a site-by-site basis. By now you can't just use, it's not a one size fits all anymore, so we've got to go into a bit more detail. So that's quite key for us. And the other thing that we're looking at in quite some detail now is on-site generation. So we only have probably low single figures really of sites that have got any kind of on-site power generation, be it solar panels, or we've got some sites that have got some solar thermal arrays on, and they were generally there because I would say they were inflicted on us by planners at the point in time that we were building a new build, where planners perhaps got a box to tick. And again, apologies if that's a bit close to home, but what we're looking at now is where we think we can generate particularly solar across our estate, because the price of electricity has moved up so substantially over the last 12 or 18 months. Solar has now become within reach of a return on investment, whereas before you were probably talking about 6, 8, 9, even with our buying power, years to get return on investment on solar. And now it's much lower than that. You know, it's into 2 or 3 years. And because we can't get any grants because of the size of our business, we don't get any assistance from government or local government. We just are unable to do that. We've got to be looking at this on a commercial basis, because we're looking at Marston's being here in another 180 years. We're not just looking at tomorrow. So I think on-site generation over the next 12 or 18 months is going to be huge for us. Great.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So one for you, Colleen. As well as your, again, excellent food, and in particular sausage rolls, which I'm really keen on, do you think you attract more potential customers by being able to market yourself as a sustainable caterer, as well as a nice place to eat and drink? How important is that message to you of sustainability in terms of, again, being an attractive place to come?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things as well, by engaging with customers, I love the fact that they actually ask questions and they push, and one of them said to us, actually, Colleen, you're wanting to be sustainable, but you still have plastic bottles, you still sell plastic bottles. What are you going to do about that? So I like that our customers come in and they challenge us and they give us ideas on how to be able to move forward. So I didn't realize how important it actually was to our customers, but by engaging with them, it's just shown that it's not just about the food that they're coming to eat. They want to know how all our food is sourced and what we're doing about the environment. So it's helped a lot, because next week, actually, I have one of our customers that's coming to sort of showcase and do a little video about how we are disposing of all our food, packaging, all those things, and what we're going to do about this particular issue about the single-use bottles of water. So it's something that we're working on now. So to answer your question, yes, it's very important.
Brilliant. That's great to hear. And so it's a positive thing, as well as something you feel positive in terms of the bottom line, as well as something you feel you should be doing, which is really great.
Can I just add to that, Steve? Sorry, I think absolutely what Colin said about, and the side salad example obviously is really relevant, whether we've got 1,500 pubs or one site, and if the customer is not recognizing you for what is on the plate or for what you're delivering to them, you've really got to think about, is it really worth it? And if you're not getting recognition from the customer, either by they're voting with their feet and they're coming into your business and it's generating more revenue for you, or as we said, it's going into the bin, and it's disheartening. You know, it's disheartening for the chefs when they see something coming back to the kitchen. It's really disheartening. So we do it on a slightly different scale, and we use the system called reputation.com, which sort of skims all of our feedback from across the web and comes back into us. So in the same way as Colin's talking to a guest locally, we're doing that across all of our sites, but you've got to be recognised and rewarded for it from your customer. Otherwise, you just got to question why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you again, Andy. So another one for you, Colleen. What are the best improvements to your space, your rented space in the Waterside Centre, that you have made, or you've found, or you've been able to encourage other people to do, in terms of think about the building fabric as well as your operation?
Yeah. So one of the first things as well, because of where I was before, we made sure that first of all, the company that we're using to get all our wastes, we use environmental waste solutions that are another local business to actually be able to take all our waste and take it to the right places. A lot of the other companies that are around, especially small businesses, they're like, oh, you do recycling for food as well. Is that not too expensive? I'm like, actually, it costs me £23 a month. So I think I've made quite a difference in speaking to other local businesses and being an example in a way to showing them how we are doing things so that they can actually be able to see that it can be achieved. Because as a small business, everyone thinks about not wasting the little money that you have. And everything's always assumed to be really expensive. But until you actually look into it, you realize a small difference can make a massive difference towards everything that you're doing. And it doesn't cost as much as you might think. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. Back to you then, Andy. You did touch on staff and bringing staff in there, but could you perhaps circle back on that and tell us how has the culture within Marston's affected your progress towards reducing emissions? Is it hard to bring, for example, new joiners on board? Have you had reluctance or maybe disinterest you've had to tackle from some staff? What's it like overall?
I think it's fair to say that we have churn. We have over 50% churn across our business per annum, and that's people who are either in temporary seasonal jobs or people that have gone off to university and so on and so forth, or they come back and whatever. So because you're churning, it would be brilliant to have the same team in place for a number of years, but you probably get elements of that team. So you might get 10-20% of that team that are fairly familiar, but actually you churn. So what you've got to do is just keep regurgitating it. It's almost like it's the wheel, but you can't just keep putting the same things out all the time. So it's why we change it and we develop it, and we use our online training, a system called Campus, which is our internal system that allows people to log on, and everybody on the team, so everybody has to do a universal training on sustainability once per annum, and you've got to do that. So you embed that back in, and then you starter that starts has to do that module. So everybody has to do it. So and we use a lot of stickers, a lot of visual stuff. So stickers on bins to make sure people put the right stuff in the bins. We use switch on stickers on all of our catering equipment in kitchens. So gone are the days where the chef walks into the kitchen, they're a bit cold, and they put all 6 rings on the hob to heat the kitchen up. That was normal life a few years ago in pubs, and actually now, gas appliances obviously are instantaneous. Certain pieces of equipment might need to be turned on 10 or 15 minutes before the start of service in order to do it, and then we switch off between service as well. We turn stuff off in the afternoon when it does go quieter. So lots of visual aids.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So we've got about 2 or 3 minutes. So I've got one final ad-libbed question from myself to you, Andy. So particularly as we all know, with the cost of energy crisis and heat, there's been a lot of concern around people who are not able to afford to keep their homes warm. And let's hope that the weather does warm up soon. But that's led on to the concept and the real networks of warm spaces around areas. And in parallel, and for longer than this, there's been the idea and the concept and enthusiasm towards turning pubs, probably more village pubs and town pubs, into community centres and getting them to take a wider role than simply selling food and drink. Could you just give us a sense of, in general, how well does that sit with you? Are your landlords broadly very keen to find things like this, or is it a nice idea which runs up against hard realities which they have to run their businesses on as well?
I think there's a hard reality that when you go to the pub, the price of your pint of beer, be it £5-6, whatever it is now, it's quite expensive to buy a pint of beer in a pub these days people forget, they just think it's that pint of beer, but it's the heat, it's the light, it's the cleaning, it's the member of staff behind the bar, whatever. So we've got to get a proportionate amount of people through to make it worth our while opening that door. But absolutely, across our pub estate, we believe that a pub should be the heart of the community that it's in. Now, whether that is an older gentleman that comes in and has a pint with his dog at 11 o'clock every morning, and he sups that pint for the next 3 hours and just wants someone to chat to, that's really important. Whether it's the the high visors, as we'd call it, you know, the people that come in after work off the building site, they come in at 4 o'clock afternoon. I know there's some stereotype in this, but those people are really important to us, whether it is the group of young mums that come in and have a cup of coffee in the afternoon. They're really important to us. So we think a pub should absolutely be the heart of the community. It's absolutely a warm space like a library or other places. And we're seeing definitely a trend to certainly older generations coming in during the day and coming in and having a sandwich and a couple of glasses of water. Well, that's absolutely fine by us. That's no problem at all, and we're comfortable with that across the estate.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Andy. And I'm sure you concur, Colleen, that I'm sure you'd welcome people coming into your kitchen.
Absolutely.
As and when. So sadly, we've come to the end of the time we've got available to us. I'd like to thank in particular both Andy and Colleen for speaking and sharing their thoughts and their passions for A, their businesses, and B, sustainability in the environment. And it's been really great to hear both your stories and thoughts on how you are progressing on that. Thank you to the officers who pulled this together and to you for listening. So again, good to talk, and we look forward to being in touch soon with more subjects of interesting environmental matters.